Welcome to this episode of the Homestead Journey Podcast 5-Minute Fridays, your weekly dose of information, inspiration, and motivation. Now, here's your host, Brian Wells.
Thank you, Bonnie, and welcome everyone to another 5-Minute Friday. On today's episode, we are going to talk about 4 more useful and versatile products on the homestead. Now, back on 5-Minute Friday number 7, I did put out a call for your thoughts, and I got some responses. And so today we're going to talk about them, as well as a few items that didn't quite make the cut for the first round, but certainly are very versatile items that I enjoy using and use very often here on our homestead. So Barb Montgomery, who is a member of the Supporting Listeners program, responded with a list of a number of items that she thought I had overlooked. Now, 2 of those items, I had a slight disagreement with her on them, in that they're great items, but I don't find them to be very versatile. And so we're actually going to talk about them on the next episode, on the next 5-Minute Friday episode of 5 one-hit wonders is what I'm calling them. Products that I really enjoy using, but they really don't serve a purpose other than their intended purpose, at least to me. But one of the items that Barb did talk about was electric fence wire. And that's one item that almost made the cut for the first round. And that is something that I use, well, quite frankly, far more than I've ever used it for electric fence. In fact, if you follow us on Facebook or Instagram, you will have seen this week that I was putting up some snow fence lined, it's wooden snow fence lined with chicken wire. And I used electric fence wire to kind of marry the 2 of them together. I have used it to make staples to hold down a weed barrier. There are just a lot of ways that I have used electric fence wire, and hardly have I ever used it for actually doing electric fence. So electric fence wire is certainly a very versatile item here on our homestead. Number 2, and this is one, again, that could have made the cut in round 1, and those are canning jars. Now, obviously, we use canning jars for their intended purpose of canning goods, but we have also used canning jars as vases or vases, as fancy people say. We use them as drinking glasses. We've used them for dry storage. I've used them to measure out feed for my animals. I have used them as fermentation vessels. I absolutely love canning jars. They're very, very versatile, and something that I certainly don't think you can ever have enough of on your homestead. Number 3, 55-gallon drums. We have used them as water catchment. We've used them to make pig waterers. I have used them to make a chicken plucker. I have used them to make a tank to hold plucked birds. 55-gallon drums are very, very useful. And in fact, those of you who follow the Mindful Homestead, and if you don't, check Jack out over on YouTube. He just built a pig feeder using a 55-gallon plastic drum. So very, very versatile. I'm always happy to have an extra 1 or 2 or 3 of those hanging around the homestead, because you're never really quite sure when they might come in handy. And finally, number 4 for this week are cement blocks. I don't think I've ever really truly built anything using cement blocks. But I use cement blocks all the time on the homestead. I use them to hold up trailers. I use them as steps to get in and out of mobile coops. I use them to hold fences in place and to hold boards where maybe there's a hole in a fence where maybe pigs have been getting out. I have used them to build a temporary structure so I could put a steel barrel on top as a scalding tank for scalding pigs. Cement blocks are certainly something that I think you should always have 10, 15, 20 of them on hand, because you're never really quite sure when they might come in handy. So 4 more very versatile items that I love having around on my homestead: electric fence wire, canning jars, 55-gallon drums, and cement blocks. What did I miss? If there's something that you think I've still missed, certainly reach out and let me know. Brian at thehomesteadjourney.net. And now for this week's Journey Quote of the Week. It has been a great journey from where I started to where I am today. I am really blessed with God's grace. And that comes from Danush. Have a great weekend, everybody. And I'll catch you here on next week's 5 Minute Friday.
Brian can be reached by emailing him at brian@thehomesteadjourney.net or by contacting him via our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. If you've enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support this podcast, we invite you to become a member of the Supporting Listeners program. For $10 a month or $100 per year, you will receive access to a community of like-minded individuals via a private Facebook group, at least one monthly live Q&A with Brian, the opportunity to participate in live recordings of the podcast, access to an ever-expanding library of helpful homesteading content, and so much more. Head on over to support.thehomesteadjourney.net for more information and to sign up today. As always, the music on this episode was provided by audionautics.com, so a big shout out to them.
And until next time, everybody, keep up the good work.